Here at CCC, we are uniquely poised.
My fingers are poised over the keys.
To help out friends, family members, and hopefully in future, strangers in need of a computer. One of our dad's friends,
Cha-cha-cha,
who goes by the name of Jabba ever since he and her father saw the original Star Wars movie in theaters, or I guess it would have been Empire Strikes Back, and they thought it was pretty wild.
we'd be in tears laughing, just like I say, in tears laughing.
But Jabba's in need of an upgrade. It's running a very old, very tired AMD A4 setup with spinning disk hard drive, Windows 7, and like a metric ton of dust. So let's get back to that point.
My fingers are poised.
Our studio's loaded with machines, mostly older ones, but some newer, newish ones too. When we found out Jabba was in need of an upgrade, we wanted to get him something that we could just give him, that he wouldn't have to pay for. Doesn't have to be some wild and crazy gaming rig with a first name, you know? Could just be an office machine with a first and a last name. So Jabba's use case is pretty simple. He likes to go online. He's a real big browser. You might call him a mega browser, or a giga browser, or a giga bowser. And he likes to play music and watch YouTube videos and all the stuff that you would normally do with a media machine. And since he's a YouTube Premium subscriber, we want to give him something that'll play videos at full quality, at minimum. So this is perfect, because we mostly build gaming machines here on this channel, outside of doing restorations of older stuff, which, it's been a while since we've done a couple of those, but long story short, we make a lot of gaming machines here, and that means a lot of the mid-range to, like, office quality hardware that gets stripped out of stuff that comes through the door usually just sits on the shelf, and there's nowhere for it to go. So I'm actually pretty excited to build this thing, because we get to see the other side of computer construction, which is the office/light use case tower. And we're going to use parts that we don't normally use, or would never normally think about using. And the best part is, they're all going to work and do exactly as intended. Before we get started though, I want to thank our patrons. And before we do that, I'd like to remind you that for only $1 a month, you can also subscribe to our Patreon and get your name shouted out in each video and in the credits and, some other extra little goodies. So, without further ado,
shout out to Steph Jo, Jerry Stoner, Branchus Creations, Gelhaar Retro Gaming, Larry Collins, Justin Morgan, Ron's Computer Videos, SShrek or Shrek, Dave's Vintage Apple Tech, Trina's Technobabble, Garth Beagle, Mac84, my man Steve, the Jersey King, or the Jersey Devil, depending on how you look at it. And then Ethan Palamaro, who's the OG patron. So,
thank you to all of you, and let's continue on. So if you're going to put together a PC for someone who has little to no budget, you still want them to have a decent experience. So there's a few benchmarks you want to hit. You're going to want like Windows 10 at the latest because it still gets security updates. You're going to want like 8 gigs of RAM at min, 4 cores at least, ideally something a little more modern. Even a small solid state drive makes a huge difference in performance, so you're definitely going to want to put an SSD in this kind of thing. Since Google Chrome is a big memory hog and a program that a lot of people use, including Jabba, you're going to want to upgrade the memory as much as you can within your budget. On the plus side, memory is super cheap these days. A 4 gig DIMM is like $10. But always remember when you're buying RAM to make sure if it's DDR3 or 4, they do not fit the same slot. Before you get started, make sure you pull a stick out and check it, or look up the motherboard spec to see what it accepts. For Jabba's build, we use the bones of a machine that came through our place recently. It's an A8 quad-core tower with 8 gigs of RAM. This thing had a case and a power supply and was basically good to go, but there were a few little changes we wanted to make. The other thing we were going to do too is strip it down and wash it, something that we love to do on this channel, because a clean computer is a happy computer. So with the thing all washed up and coming together, we decided to pair it with a passively cooled AMD GPU, something that would be a little more silent for Mr. Jabba. The nice thing about this card was it doesn't require PCI power, so we swapped out the power supply for one that doesn't have a PCI Express cable on it because we could use that in a future build, and then this one delivers the same amount of power for the same use case. Jabba's happy, we're happy, the machine's happy.
I'm so happy, darling.
I as well. Are you happy, Jeeves?
Yes, sir.
So like we mentioned earlier, we wanted to throw a little more RAM into the build. An extra 4 gig stick went in because we had one laying around. This brought us to a total of 12 gigs of RAM. At this time, Jabba was only using a spinning disk hard drive, so we opted for a 240 gig SSD. That's plenty for what he needs. It'll make boot up times real snappy and quick. And he also has his own hard drive at home, the spinning disk 1 terabyte that he had on his previous machine, so we added an extra SATA cable so we could connect it easily. Nice thing about this too, he doesn't have to lose any of the old files on his PC, and we can restore his desktop icons and all that stuff. Now this case, for some reason, didn't have a rear exhaust fan, so we pulled one out of the collection. This thing may not look spectacular, but it is silent, which goes perfectly with the theme of this build, which is quiet, because it does sit in his primary living space, and we didn't want him sitting there listening to an airplane take off all the time. Jabba might rep the name Jabba, but he is not a member of the Hutt cartel, and he likes things quiet. So with that, we have a working PC. Unfortunately, we don't have any footage of us setting it up at Jabba's Jabba's place. He's a private gentleman, you know, he likes to have his own privacy, and that's okay with us. We're just happy that he has a computer that he's going to be able to use and he'll enjoy. We ended up going for dinner with Jabba, though, and our dad recently, and he was telling us about how excited and happy he was using the machine. It had been about 2 weeks at that point that he'd had his claws sunk into this thing, and he was loving it. We're just happy Jabba's happy. I didn't want to end up like Leia.
Walkie nipple pinchy.
And frankly, one of the best parts was we were able to get another computer off the shelf with mid-range hardware that, you know, at first glance, we thought might never go anywhere. Who needs an older AMD quad-core board? Not a ton of people these days if they're doing gaming, but you know what? It's perfect for people who are just using media or doing browsing or any of that kind of stuff. Because you know what? At CCC, we're trying to do more of this stuff right now. We have a lot of people sending us hardware these days, and we're obviously not going to use it all. So we're trying to put together as much as we can to get into the hands of people who might need it without any cost to them. And so far, it's going great. Oh, mother of God.